So today's video is about the first trip that I took in about 2 years. This trip wasn't a kite surf centric trip. It was more about travel, family, introducing my daughter to all of my family members that haven't met her. But of course I brought my kite surf stuff. We were going to a lot of locations that weren't known for kite surfing. And so the video is really about those sessions, how I figured out where to kite, how I connected with other kiters, and whether or not I made any good sessions happen on this trip. If you want to skip ahead to the travel tips, just look for the time code down below. Few details about the itinerary. We flew into Paris.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport.
We then drove down to the Loire Valley for a family reunion. Then we went out to the Cap Ferret, which is a small little beach town outside of Bordeaux. Then we went down to Bidart, which is a great surf spot in the Basque Country. Then we went down to Bilbao, hopped a plane over to Mallorca. An ambitious itinerary, to say the least, for taking a first trip with an 18-month-old and lugging all of your kite gear along too. Cool, so first stop on the trip that's really kiteable is the Cap Ferret. I'd been there before. I'd seen the huge, epic, massive beaches. I'd seen the Bay of Arcachon, so I knew there was tons of water and options to potentially kite in. I just didn't know how to access them. I did a lot of Googling. I looked at kiteforum.com in the spot section. I scoured YouTube, I scoured Instagram and messaged anyone that were posting clips from there. And I actually got a response from a local wave surfer named Francois. And then I did a bunch of reading and I knew you could surf on the ocean side pretty easily. So I had a few ideas of which beaches to go check out. I went to the closest, biggest beach, and that's where I got my biggest break. I saw a kite surfer out there. Yeah, I just flagged the guy down on the beach, asked him for some info on the spot and where to go and where to launch and what the wind's like. And so hopefully I'll come out tomorrow and try to get a session in. So I went to that same beach that I reconned. It's called Plage d'Horizon or Horizon Beach. And I went out, wind was up. Actually, it was up a ton. I pumped up the smallest kite I had, which was the 9 meter. And here's that first session. Crazy. Kite almost fell out of the sky. This swell is big. So after that first session, I was at least psyched to have one on the board. Then I got a message from Francois, the wave kiter, and he said he'd be out the next day because the wind would be up and that he would take me to a secret spot that had epic wind and a really good break. So here's the second session from the Cap Ferret. Literally my mind was blown. Huge open beaches, these German bunkers kind of scattered around the landscape, miles and miles of empty, large ocean break. And this session absolutely made the trip.
Streets feel loud, the mix with light, goes down, blown down, and life shines back.
This is unreal. What a cool sunset session.
And it's never coming down, we're invincible.
Wow, one of the coolest sunset sessions of my entire life. This is just such a sick, dramatic coastline. Oh, I'm lucky.
And it's never coming down, we're invincible.
Voici avec François qui m'a montré le spot au Cap Ferret et mon pote, très bon pote de YouTube. Voilà. Parfait, bah merci beaucoup. Salut. So next stop on the trip was Bidart. This is in the Basque Country. I know this is a really popular spot for surfing. I'd been there before, so I knew the beaches get super slammed during the summer, so I knew all of the main beaches would be totally inaccessible. And so I knew this was gonna be a tough one. I got down there, I went to surf shops, I asked around, and basically over and over again, the message was there's no kiting here in the prime season. You really have to go an hour north, leaving my wife and daughter without a car. So second stop, Bidart, that was a wash. Totally bummed to have spent so much time in such a beautiful place and not gotten a session. Final and last stop of the trip, we hopped a domestic Spanish flight over to Mallorca. So I'd been there before, I knew it was a rocky coastline. I knew it was gonna be a bit trickier to figure this one out, so I did some research ahead of time getting there. So I get there and I realize I am in the north of Mallorca, which is Dea. And at Dea, it's just huge, rocky, super intimidating cliffs all the way down the water, no beaches anywhere. So right away, my hopes are dashed. We did go out on a sailboat one day, so I had a little bit of a hope that I'd be able to sneak out on the sailboat, bring my gear with me, and ultimately that didn't end up happening. It was like a 2-mile walk to get to the boat. I couldn't lug my gear. We get out on the boat that day. It's just absolutely epic scenery on the north coast of Mallorca, and the wind just picks up out of nowhere. We get, 30, 35 and beyond that. The sailboat had to take its sails down, but I knew I would have been overpowered on my 9-meter. But the very last day of the trip, I saw a window where there was gonna be some wind. I drove across the incredible landscape of Mallorca, and about 10 minutes away from the beach, I could just see the kites everywhere. Oh my God, I am so excited. I hit the beach, white caps were kind of blowing in on this just crystal clear turquoise water. Huge grin across my face, super psyched to finally find some wind and to get such an incredible location to round up the trip. And here's that last session. Finally made it. This is unreal. So there you have it. That was my non-kite kite trip. I went to 3 different spots. I got 3 sessions, but only in 2 of those spots. And what I wanted to talk through were a couple of the tips that helped me get out on the water. Tips in terms of access, and then tips just in terms of finding where the spots are and finding the intel to get out and figure out where to ride. So in terms of pre-trip planning, kiteforum.com has a spot library that has pretty good information on most places I've been in the world. The general kiteboarding group in Facebook seems to be one of the largest I've found. There's also smaller regional kiteboarding groups on Facebook, so all of those are worth hitting up. YouTube and Instagram tends to be where you find really passionate kite surfers posting about their spots, and they tend to be receptive when you message them. So don't forget about the kite surf schools. Some are super open to sharing local intel and inviting you out to go ride there. Definitely use that as part of your pre-trip research. After that, try surf shops, try sailors. All of those people, when I asked about kiteboarding, most of them could say, hey, when I see them over here or I see them over there. So those are my tips about the pre-research planning. I've got a couple other tips around access that I think also help. So obviously being able to self-launch and self-land, that allows you to get access in places where there might not be other kiters. Obviously being able to read wind conditions and understanding how to find the local conditions, super important. And then the last and probably the most important for me was foiling. A lot of these places were light wind spots, so I wouldn't have been able to get out and kite without the foil. So yeah, there you have it. That was my trip. Hope you liked the video. If you've got any questions, throw them in the comments down below. And thanks for watching.